Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient, been dealing with cancer for going on 3 years now and doing very well. And I'm very happy to have just an incredibly special guest today who I'll talk about in a second. Uh, there's been some great announcements, which I will be sharing with everyone here in a future episode because I'm kind of under wraps about certain things. But anyway, I'm so happy and so honored to have Christine Handy, and I'll let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does. And I think everybody is going to be so excited to hear this episode of To Be Your Own Hero. So, Christine, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
That's a loaded question. People usually read my bios. So let me think. So my bio reads, no, I'm an author of a book called Walk Beside Me. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I am a model of 40 years, 40. I'm on the board of 3 nonprofits, which I'm super proud about. And I'd love to talk about those because they're important nonprofits. They're not mine. I'm just on the board. I'm also a motivational speaker, and I'm a mother of 2 sons. And I mean, there's so many things. I anyway, so that's a little bit about what I do. Who I am is I'm a permanent cheerleader for women and for people in general. I believe in cheering people on. I believe in hope. I believe without hope, we have really nothing. I believe in using your story to help other people who have come after us and pave a way for more inspiration and hope. Because when I was diagnosed with cancer, I did not have any contemporaries in my life. I was young and didn't know anything about the disease or the impact it would have on me. I guess that's good. At the time, I didn't know. After I did know a lot. And so I've used my story in many ways as being a social media influencer, as writing a book, as being a speaker, and as many ways as I in modeling, as many ways as I possibly can to help other people who've come, after me.
That's fantastic. And I think the thing that I was most excited about to talk to you is, I mean, you're a model, you're beautiful and all that. But I think what impresses me about you is you're a more beautiful person inside. And you are just so wonderful, and your heart is in the right place, and you have faith, and you want to help people, and so those are the things that really resonate with me. And so why don't we start when you talking about when you got diagnosed with cancer and what that was like.
Well, that was a really difficult time for me because I had had another illness prior to that. Well, I'd actually had 2. I had a colon resection when I was 35. Now, bear in mind, I am a model at the time. I'm a self-proclaimed athlete. Have a I have a mindset that I'm kind of untouchable, which is I don't even know why I felt that way. It's kind of a silly mindset. Nobody's untouchable. And so, and I'm what I mean by untouchable is untouchable in the illness space. Because I took care of my body from such an early age. I was constantly looking after my body because of the industry I was in. And so I really just believed that I was not going to be affected by illness. And I'm also allergic to sugar. So you take that out of the equation and you'd think you'd be pretty healthy. I was the unhealthiest healthy person that I knew. I was constantly getting infections and random illnesses. And then when I was 35, I had a colon resection, which was out of nowhere, almost died on the table, almost bled to death with a complication to the surgery. I woke up to a blood bag and a port in my neck. I didn't even know what a port was at the time. And then fast forward 5 years later, I had an infection in my arm that was misdiagnosed and ultimately cost me my wrist. I don't have a wrist in my right arm. It's my right arm was rebuilt by cadaver bones and a cadaver Achilles tendon. And those things happened before breast cancer. And so I was in New York City about to get my 6-week post fused arm checkup from my surgeon in New York. And I'm in a hotel, and for months I've had a cast on my right arm. And so I'm pouring liquid soap over my shoulder because that's the only way I could wash my body. And I'm in the hotel room and there's no liquid soap. And so I called down to the front desk and I said, is there any way I could get some liquid soap? Now, I had a cast at that moment from my fingertips to my shoulder. So if you've never had a cast over your elbow, you don't know what I'm talking about. You can't do anything. You can't get dressed by yourself. You can't make food by yourself. You can't hardly do anything. You can't drive. And so I was dependent. I was starting at that point to be pretty dependent on other people, which was really against who I was because I was so independent. And it was more of a pride issue, I think, for me. I wanted to, be able to take care of myself. And so when I'm in this hotel room and there's no liquid soap, I take a bar of soap, my arm's outside of the shower, and I'm fumbling to try to wash it, at least some of my body. And I felt a lump in my breast. And after the previous few years, I thought there's no way this is going to be breast cancer. There's just no way anybody could handle all of this. And I just was praying, fervently and just saying, God, please don't let this be cancer. Just let this be something minor. And 5 days later, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. And at that point, I really did give up on life. I thought, okay, well, I'm just a burden to the world. I'm just a burden to my children. I'm never going to have a career again. And my value, which I thought was external, was getting washed away. And so it quickly became very apparent to me that I would absolutely die if I didn't fight this disease. And so I had a ton of friends and family who just came by my side and just said, listen, God will never forsake you. There's purpose in this pain. We don't know what it looks like right now, but we know that there is a reason that this is all happening. And you just have to hold on. We will carry you. We will never leave you. We will feed you. We will take care of your family. We are in this for the long run. We are not in this for just the good times. We are in it for the bad too. And over the next 3 weeks, they convinced me that my life was worth saving. And so because of those people, I am here today to share my story. And quickly, after that first month, I was ready to fight because they were pouring into me about faith and God and again, that this would have a purpose. And so I started to believe them and I started to have faith again. And so when I started to fight for my life, I took a lot of very solid notes about who I was prior to this diagnosis and who I wanted to be. If I was going to survive this, what did I want to be in this world? Who did I want to be? What did I want to represent? And it looked completely different than the person that wasn't diagnosed. And it was because I was super insecure. I was dependent on society's accolades. I was dependent on my beauty, my external beauty, which really had nothing to do with my value, which my friends certainly taught me. And it had nothing to do with who I was because what I was building my life on before my diagnosis was just quicksand. So things that can be taken away are quicksand, materialism, relationships can be taken away, right? I've gone through a divorce. I know that they can falter. And so, and money and things like that you can't take with you. But I could take faith with me. I could level out my stability with faith because I was super unstable before my diagnosis. And I don't mean mentally unstable, but I was pouring my time and my life into things that didn't matter. And so when I was going through chemotherapy and I was rebuilding myself, really doing a lot of introspection and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be, I had to change the voice in my head. I had to change who I was listening to. I had to change what I was watching on TV. I used to watch Bravo TV all the time and look at all these celebrities and think that the fighting on the Dallas Housewives or the New York Housewives shows was normal. It wasn't normal. And I had to reteach myself that those things were not only were they not normal, but I didn't want or need them in my life. And so I got rid of all of that negativity and all that fear-based life that I was living, and all the insecurity washed away. Because if I put God at the helm, and then I put me, and then my relationships, et cetera, and down the road, then it wasn't chaos anymore. It was in the right order. And if it's in the right order, it makes sense. And if it makes sense, then I have a platform to stand on. And so because my life was starting to make sense, even though I was the sickest I've ever been in my entire life, that was profound. So now my life is making sense, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to die of cancer or not. And I think to myself, wow, had I learned this so long ago, I would have been so much happier and so much more fulfilled and probably contributed to the society, not just taken. And so when my chemotherapy was over, and which was just the beginning of my surgeries, I wrote a book about my journey, which became a popular book. And part of the reason why I wrote it, well, there's a lot of reasons why I wrote it. Most importantly, I wanted to show the difference between being identified and being obsessed with external value versus internal value. And really our purpose in our to be on level ground, you have to have an internal value. And if you don't have an internal value, then you'll make bad decisions. When I had no self-esteem, I was making terrible decisions. And so my life again was chaos because of that decision making. And so I wrote a book about my life story. And then because of that platform, then I was able to start speaking. Then I became a social media influencer. It was like all these avenues were opening for me because I was being courageous and I was being vulnerable with my story. And I was trying to use my story to help other people. And it wasn't self-serving versus the life I lived prior, which was, oh, I need to go buy this bag. Why? Because I don't feel very good about myself. And if I carry this bag, maybe somebody will care about me. And the mentality was gone forever. Like I'll never go back to that mentality because it was fleeting and it didn't build anything inside of me, and it wasn't built on faith or purpose. So I became the social
Let
media
me
influencer.
pause you right there, and you before we drift off too far.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that I think is very, very important. And when you start giving of yourself,
Yes.
how did that change your life?
Well, I lived a very happy life. I have no complaints about the life I lived before, although I would have changed some things. I live a joyful life right now. And that's the difference. The difference between happiness and joy is great. And when you give of yourself, whether it's time or your resources or your energy or your life's work, that brings joy. And if you don't know joy, then I would start by serving other people and add that to your life because that will quickly change your perspective.
I completely agree. I think you and I traveled a very similar road. Um, as far as mindset goes, I was very, just going about my day and just
Yes.
running the rat race, and that's what I knew. And then cancer came, and everything changed. Everything changed because I realized if I wanted to be on the other side, I would have to change my mindset completely to, embrace giving back. And I never realized I started my YouTube channel when I was really, really sick.
Hmm.
And then I started adding things to that without expecting anything in return. And I never realized what amazing, amazing things would come back to me on a daily basis. And it's just mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing, what that shift in mindset did.
Yes.
And it sounds, real similar to what happened with you. And so go ahead.
Well, I think that what you're talking about is outcome. And when I was fixated on fear and worried about whether I was going to live or die during cancer, the very beginning of my diagnosis, then now I was paralyzed. I couldn't move on any level, relationally, personally, spiritually, mentally, physically. I couldn't make any decisions. But when I gave up the outcome and said, I don't know what's going to happen, it's out of my hands, it's out of my control, because it is, then I was able to be courageous for myself and just wake up every day and say, okay, I'm going to show courage for today. And wherever that gets me, it gets me. And then I was able to show courage for other people and my community, of course, my family, and inside my own home. So then when you build on that, like getting rid of the outcome, and by the way, that's also getting rid of pride and ego. Because if you don't have any pride and ego, then you just don't care what other people think. You don't care, okay, well, it's in God's hands, it's not in my own. That's so freeing and liberating. There's so much pressure that is on our society that says that other people have to care. about you or take care of you, or you should care about what other people think of you. And that's not true. You know, when I started to take better care of myself, I realized that that was really ultimately the best self-esteem nurturer that I could give myself. By showing courage to myself, then I was building my own self-esteem back. And so when we, like I said, when we get rid of the outcome, like which is what you have done, and just said, no, I'm going to live for today. I'm going to be happy today. I'm going to be joyful today, and I'm going to serve today. The rest is out of my control. Then you have these things that multiply and these things that come for you. And the previous life that we probably both lived, we're trying to control what was coming to us. And the things that we wanted weren't coming because we didn't have any control over those things. And it was more self-serving, which is now it's not self-serving at all. It's selfless. And how ironic that that's when it comes, right?
Just perfectly said. Absolutely perfectly said. And that's exactly what has happened, I think, for both of us is,
Yes.
you know, we had this perception. I had this perception I was the healthiest guy in the world as well before cancer. I mean, I worked out, I was in great shape, I was a vegan, thought I had the greatest diet, and you have these things in your mind, and then all of a sudden cancer hits, and all of a sudden it's like all that goes out the window. It's
Yes.
it was a lie that you know believed in for so long.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden everything changes, and you have to adapt, and you have to adapt quickly, and you have to believe that you know you're going to live and you're going to make it. And that's a start. It is working with that mindset to move forward is just so important. And believing that what is out there and what is in the future, you know, can be great and will be great if you allow it to be so. And you can help so many people in
Yes.
this position. That's what I wanted to do, and I had no idea, absolutely none, that you know, starting a YouTube channel, I just wanted to help one person. I said, hey, if I can help one person, and now it's like it's so mind-boggling, you know, how many directions it comes from. You know,
Right.
people reaching out to me. I have probably now people between 5 and 20 people a day reaching out to me, asking me, you know, what do I do? You know, that there's
Good for
such
you.
a need for
Yes.
what we have to say.
There's a need
So,
for hope. There's a
yes.
need for hope. That's
Oh,
the bottom line. If you have hope, we have nothing. Yeah, I think it's
absolutely.
yeah, I think if and by the way, it's very vulnerable. So what you're doing is vulnerable. What I'm doing is vulnerable because a lot of people are afraid. It's that fear base. Well, what if I share my story and people, you know, they're embarrassed by it or they feel it's a self-esteem issue, right? It goes back to self-esteem. But if you put your story out there and you just go, you know, if it helps somebody, that's the purpose. If it doesn't, I tried. And that's freedom. It's not paralysis, and they're very different. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think we've done a very good job of it. And I think it allows other people to do the same, right? It shows that these stories really do matter. And it is important work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And what I really marvel at, Christine, in talking to you is just your supreme confidence just oozes out.
It's so
It really
funny.
does. No, it really does.
Well, I'm unstoppable in my self-esteem. But it's ironic because I had zero self-esteem 11 years ago. I mean, zero. I was allowing a doctor to bully me. I was allowing other people to bully me. And I felt so small and I felt such shame. And to go from that to a cancer diagnosis and to lose my external beauty, to be 90 pounds wet and to have no hair on my entire body and to be sickly and depending on other people and to come out of that fire with an unstoppable self-esteem, it's very unusual. And so I think by modeling this life to people, I think it's showing them that you don't have to survive, you can thrive. And that looks very different. And even with my modeling, again, like I said, when I was after my colon issue and after my arm issue, I never went back to modeling. It wasn't until 2020 when I had a MRSA infection in implant because I had implants after my mastectomies. And I went through this grotesque pain, physical pain with the when they explanted the implants and excavated my chest for the third and the fourth or the fifth and the sixth time. I had more surgery on my chest. I think I've had 12 or 13 surgeries on my chest. And it was just like enough, right? I mean, I had breast cancer and mastectomies and implants and reconstructions, and all of a sudden the implants were then taken away because of the MRSA infection. And I had a concave chest, and I thought to myself, if I can feel this emotional pain and I have a strong self-esteem and I'm financially stable and I have a really good support system, if I can feel this bad, imagine the women that aren't financially stable, have to go to work the next day and have no support system and nobody's supporting or cheering them on. Imagine how they will feel. And so that's what fueled me to go back to modeling. And so when I decided to go back to modeling, I called my modeling agency. It's a great story because there's a lot of no's in it, but it's about triumph. So I called my modeling agency. I said, I'd really like to come back to work. Now, at that point, I was 50 years old. And they were like, okay, sure, no problem. But then I explained the situation with my chest and they were like, well, let's see. Maybe you can put some socks in there, or maybe, you can, fill some, something with the sports bra. And I was like, I don't think so. That's not who I am. So I ended up calling my manager and saying to my manager, you know what, I want to walk in New York Fashion Week. Now I had never been a runway model. I was always a print model. So she said, well, I can get you into some shows. I mean, she's not a modeling agent. So I ultimately got to watch some runway shows in New York for New York Fashion Week. New York Fashion Week is the Mecca, right? And so I thought if I could just get in the audience and I had enough courage to go up to the designers after the show, explain to them what I was trying to do, explain to them that my history in the modeling world, maybe they would say yes. And some people said no, like my modeling agency said no. But I ultimately was hired by 5 brands to walk in New York Fashion Week in the next runway show in the next season. It was September, New York Fashion Week, and I walked in February. I didn't know how to walk in any runway. I never walked a runway in my entire life, but I YouTubed it and I figured it out. And so then I started to walk in New York Fashion Week. And since then I've walked in 4 different seasons. Then I said to my modeling, or no, not my modeling agency, my manager, I said, we need to get to companies like Victoria's Secret. And she was like, how do I get to Victoria's Secret? I was like, I don't know, but I have faith in you. So we got to Victoria's Secret and it sounds so easy and it wasn't. She bartered for their number or their information. Ultimately, I had a meeting with them, which led to another meeting, more and more meetings. And 15 months into this process, they hired me to be a breastless model for their brand. And so I could have been, my self-esteem could have been hit by all the no's. But instead I was like, okay, well, if you don't want to help me do it, I'll do it. And to be honest with you, let's go back to letting go of the outcome. If everybody said no, it wouldn't have mattered because I know that I would have shown up for myself. I would have shown courage. And if they said no, I would have said, okay, I did my best. I did the best job I could. But some people said yes. And so now I'm still modeling. And this has been 3 years of runway modeling, well, and print modeling too. And it's changing lives because women are seeing me on New York Fashion Week and the runway in Victoria's Secrets without a chest going, okay, if she can do that, then we can do this, right? And so we can take all of our tragedy, every single little piece of it, and use it to help other people, and not as self-serving. Do I want to see myself in New York Fashion Week? Not really. I'm tired. I'm in chronic pain. I kind of like just to stay home. I love where I live. I like being at home, but it's important. It's important for people to see that. And that's why I do it.
I have no words for that. That is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love that. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. I love your fearlessness. I mean, and your confidence. And this is a perfect example of, reinventing yourself and putting your pride aside. As cancer patients, I think one of the first things that we need to learn is throwing your pride out the window.
Ego, get rid of it.
Yes.
That's the first thing that needs to go. Get rid of your ego.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Because And it's hard. It's hard to look yourself in the mirror as
Yes.
a cancer patient and accept who you see.
Yep.
I mean, really who you are, because it's a different person than you were before cancer.
Yes.
So let's talk about that aspect of it,
So
accepting the new you.
I have a great visual for this. I like to think of it as a home. So I had a beautiful home, not physical home, I mean mentally, before cancer, right? I had a white picket fence and I had all the things that I wanted. I was a model and my life was in order, my order, whatever your order is. Then I had to build a house in the modeling, I mean in the illness world. I had to build a new house in the illness space, which by the way, I didn't know how to do because it was so foreign to me and I was young and it was so overwhelming. But I had to figure out a new house. And so I built the house and it didn't have the white picket fence, but it had other things that maybe I didn't have in the previous house. Then in the after illness world, I had to build another house, which looks different than the first house and the second house. And those are hard things to do. They have different people in them. You're different in them. They have different colors. They have different cities. But if you look at it that way, so many people say to me, well, I don't know how to restart my life. I don't know how to start. I will never be the same. And they think of that as a bad thing. But if you say to them, just rebuild the house, it does look different, but that's okay. And you can build a bigger house. I have a bigger house than I had when I was before cancer. And I'm not talking about a structure. I'm a model. I'm an author. I went to Harvard and got my master's degree to get rid of my chemo brain. I'm a social media influencer. My house is bigger and it's bigger with faith and it's bigger with friendships and it's bigger with all the things that I was lacking before. So does my house look different? Yes, but maybe it looks better. And I'm in chronic pain and I have no chest and I have, all these things that are painful. But guess what? I love my house. And so if we can look at it like that, then there's more hope. And it's a different vision. It's a different mentality. And it's easier than somebody just saying to you, just be positive. That's not easy for people. But if you show them ways that they can be more positive, then that they can feel that, they can see that, right? So that's what I'm trying to do.
That is an incredible analogy. I've never heard anything like that. So
well, I made it up. And I've said it on interviews before, but maybe you haven't heard that.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that's a good visual for people.
It is. That is absolutely fantastic. And it's something that people can understand, you know, with their normal lives. I think with cancer, you bring in a lot of elements that people aren't used to: confusion and fear and fear of the unknown and fear of the future and all these different emotions, because you don't know where you're going to go and you don't know what your place is in the world at this point, other than immersing yourself in your fear. And so to be able to think beyond that as a cancer patient, I think is so important, and to realize that there is hope and people have done it and people have conquered this thing. And the fascinating thing about cancer is everybody's journey is different. It's part of who you are as a person, how you deal with it, along with the fact that there's all these different cancers. I have prostate, bone, and lung cancer. You've had breast cancer, and so all these different factors play into a cancer journey. And that's why each person can't just accept what their oncologist says as gospel, and you have to treat it as your whole person, from your diet, from your mindset, to all these different things, faith,
Mhm.
and bring in all these ingredients that maybe you haven't explored before, but those are the things that can really help you. So I think with the cancer diagnosis is you have to have an open mind, but only to a certain point, because so many people are going to come at you from so many different directions saying, hey, I've got the cure and all this
Right.
kind of stuff. And so, but you have to discern what
Mhm.
is going to work for you and what is best for you as a person.
Right. Yeah. Faith is at the top of my list.
Absolutely, and it's done very very well for you,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it
and that's what makes my self-esteem unstoppable. That I mean, that's it. That's the prescription. And everybody has a personal experience with their faith. I'm just talking about my own. But if I did not completely depend on God, I think that living in the world that we live in, I would have more insecurities.
oh, no question, no question.
He's my foundation.
Absolutely, I feel the same way, and you know, I have relied on him throughout this journey, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. And but I think that what's most important is as a cancer patient or a patient of any kind
Yes.
is to take that faith and really believe in that faith moving forward, that is an important ingredient in your healing process.
Yeah, I agree. That's it's an interesting one because so many people don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. But I would be dishonest if I didn't talk about my faith because it was such a big part of it is continues to be a big part of my journey. When I was publishing my book, I had some people in the publishing world say, you should take that out of it because you might it might be off-putting to some people. And I said, well, that's not authentic. That's how this is part of my journey and I have to be totally authentic to my story. And God's a big part of well, God is the biggest part of it. So I'm not taking it out. And I just said to God, you know what? If you want this book to be out here, you'll put it out there. If you don't, you don't. It's not mine. It's again, the outcome was not mine. It's just I can do what I can in my own might, but it really is God's might. And so whatever happens is really from him.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Christine, we could talk for hours, and I would like to invite you back to
Awesome.
shoot a part two. Would you be interested in doing that?
I have a lot more wisdom. I call it post-traumatic wisdom that- instead of PTSD, although, I probably have both.
And I think we could all learn from all these different experiences, and
Yeah.
especially from where you're coming from.
Yes.
It's such a resonating example, and so many people can learn. And I don't, I live my life to learn, and I look at all these different experiences that we have, and I look at different ways that I can learn from all of these things. And I am so honored and so happy to have met you and experienced this interview, because you have such great wisdom and knowledge that you share with everyone. And so that is a beautiful thing.
Well, I
And
think I think people they love storytelling, but they want to go, okay, well, how do you do it? Right? How do you change the mindset? And so I try to give them takeaways and tools because I would have liked the tools myself. I had to figure it out.
I think that's one of the best ways. I had to figure it out as well.
Yeah.
That's when it
Teach them.
really gets embedded and
Yeah.
really becomes part of you, is when you have the joy of figuring it out and saying, hey, wow, that works. And that
Yeah,
works for me. So
for
uh,
sure.
I
You.
really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me here at To Be Your Own Hero. And I like to leave everybody with a couple of quotes that I read. And this is from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And the first one is, you can make the mind give you back anything you want. But remember, the mind can give back only what it was given first. So fill your mind with all peaceful experiences possible, then make planned and deliberate excursions to them in memory. And then the second quote is, self-trust is the first secret of success. So believe in and trust yourself, which is what you do, Christine. Thank you so much for joining me here. And we live in such a divisive world. There's so much negativity. And what Christine and I our purpose is to spread positivity and help make the world a better place. And she is definitely doing that. And we could all do that. We could all do that as individuals, even if it's something small. Make somebody's day, say hello, smile at them, help somebody who needs help. But we could all make a difference in this world, and that's what it's all about. And make the most out of every single day, every single hour, every single minute, and every single breath. Thank you once again for joining us at To Be Your Own Hero, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.